The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Elder Thrazcon raised his weathered claw. His species, the Velkari, had witnessed the rise and fall of 17 civilizations across 4 millennia. When he spoke, even the most arrogant counselors listened. "I warned you." His voice rasped through the translation matrix. "I told you not to touch the human colony on Epsilon Prime." Commander Zephix of the Krathian Empire sneered, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "One colony world, Elder, barely 3,000 settlers. We needed the resources, and they were in the way." "You don't understand," Thrazcon insisted, his 3 eyes dimming with something that looked like fear. "Humans don't think like us. They don't calculate cost versus benefit when you harm their own. They don't weigh strategic value against losses. They simply don't pardon." The chamber erupted in dismissive chittering and buzzing. The Krathian Empire was the dominant military force in 3 sectors. They had crushed the Yondar rebellion in weeks. They had subjugated 12 species without breaking stride. What were humans but another upstart species that had barely touched the stars? Nobody heeded the Elder's warning. 6 months later, Nick adjusted his combat armor in the cramped quarters of the UHSF Retribution. The ship hummed with barely contained fury, not mechanical but human. Every soldier aboard had volunteered for this mission within hours of hearing about Epsilon Prime. "You ready?" Kiza asked from the adjacent bay. Her dark eyes held the same cold determination that burned in every human heart on this vessel. "Been ready since I saw the footage," Nick replied, checking his rifle's charge for the 3rd time. The images were seared into his memory. Scorched homes, scattered belongings, and 3,000 graves that the Krathians hadn't bothered to dig deep enough. Kiza nodded. She'd lost a cousin on Epsilon Prime, a botanist who'd gone there to study alien flora. He'd sent excited messages about his research right up until the Krathian warships arrived. Then, silence. "Remember what Commander Torres said," Kiza reminded him. "This isn't about rage. It's about making sure they never do this again, to anyone." "I remember," Nick said quietly. "No pardons." The phrase had become their motto. When the United Human Space Force had presented their response plan to Earth's government, there had been no debate, no deliberation. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would respond with such overwhelming force that no species in the galaxy would ever mistake human patience for weakness again. The Krathian Empire's core systems had stood unconquered for 6 centuries. Their military academies taught that their fortress worlds were impregnable, protected by layered shield networks and defense platforms that could vaporize entire fleets. They learned differently when humanity arrived. The humans didn't come with a fleet. They came with dozens of fleets emerging from hyperspace simultaneously across 15 Krathian systems. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't negotiate. They simply began dismantling the Empire piece by piece with mechanical precision. Nick's boots hit Krathian soil on their industrial world of Krath 7. His unit moved through the manufacturing complex like a scalpel, disabling weapons production facilities with surgical strikes. No civilian casualties, humans had rules about that, but the message was clear. Everything that made the Krathians strong was being systematically destroyed. "Target secured," Kiza reported over the comm, her team having disabled the planetary shield generator. Moving to secondary objective. Across 15 worlds, the pattern repeated. Humans didn't fight with rage or hatred. They fought with the cold, terrifying efficiency of a species that had decided on a course of action and would see it through regardless of cost. 3 weeks into the campaign, Commander Zephix requested an emergency council session. He appeared as a hologram, the proud warrior now visibly shaken. "Make them stop," he pleaded. "We'll withdraw from human space. We'll pay reparations. You can surrender to them directly," Counselor Mira of the Sindari Union interrupted. "We're not involved in this conflict." "But you're the council." "You're supposed to maintain order." Elder Thrazcon's voice cut through the chamber. "I told you, humans don't pardon, and now you understand what that means." The Krathian commander's hologram flickered. "They're not even angry anymore. That's what terrifies me. They're just efficient, methodical, like they're following a checklist. Our military is in ruins, our economy is collapsing, and they show no signs of stopping." "Then perhaps," the elder said softly, "you should have listened when I warned you what happens when you make humans decide you're a threat to their species." 5 weeks after it began, the Krathian Empire formally surrendered. Nick and Kiza stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the treaty was transmitted. The terms were harsh but not cruel. Complete disarmament, war crime tribunals, and a century of reconstruction oversight by a joint Human Council task force. "Is it over?" Kiza asked. Nick looked at the tactical display, showing human forces maintaining position throughout Krathian space. "For them, but every species in the galaxy just learned something new about us." "What's that?" "That we don't seek war. We don't want conquest. But if you harm humans, we don't forgive, we don't forget, and we don't stop until you're no longer a threat. Ever." On the Galactic Council station, Elder Thrazkan addressed an unusually full chamber. Every species had sent representatives eager to understand what had just transpired. "Let me be clear," he said, his ancient eyes surveying the crowd. "Humans are not warlike by nature. They're actually quite compassionate. But they have a saying, 'Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.' They will always give you one chance. But only one." He paused, letting the words sink in. The Krathians received their chance when humans peacefully established Epsilon Prime. They chose violence. And humanity chose to ensure no one would ever mistake human mercy for human weakness again. The chamber remained silent as counselors absorbed the lesson. The elder continued, "Remember this day. Remember that humans don't pardon, not because they're incapable of mercy, but because they understand that true peace requires those who break it to face consequences so severe that no one dares repeat the offense." As the session adjourned, representatives from a dozen species filed formal requests to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Others rushed to review their own interactions with human colonies, suddenly eager to resolve any potential disputes. The message had been received loud and clear across the galaxy. Humans were patient, reasonable, and willing to coexist peacefully with any species. But cross them, and they would remind you that humanity hadn't clawed its way to the stars by forgiving existential threats. Elder Thrazkan watched the scrambling counselors and allowed himself a grim smile. Perhaps now they would listen when he offered warnings about humanity. Though he suspected this was one lesson they wouldn't need to learn twice.